Is this on? It's on now. So in the Hollywood version of that story, you sit down at the bar next to this really charming person who's like, "Young lady, you look kind of blue." I'm like, and that guy is Australian, and now you're married.
Yeah.
That was really beautiful. Thank you for. When did you write that?
Yesterday. I really liked him. He helped. Oh, God damn it.
The thing that kept occurring to me while you were talking about it, and I was like, the songwriter in me was like, as soon as you started talking about the gambling woman, I was like, oh.
You knew where it was going. I know.
This is like, and the thing I've been thinking about a lot lately, also because people have been asking me, is like, I just spent a year writing a book, and a book is not a song. And, a song is a kind of a different sort of a poem. And then there's, there's also fiction, and there's sculpture, and there's painting. And there is this weird thing you feel as an artist where, like, you get that image and it's meaningful, and you're like, what am I going to fucking do with you? Like, what am I going to make you into? And it was really interesting, the experience of writing this book and being like, it's all like the same machinery in there when you start realizing that, this thing in life reflects this thing in life. And I could make it a 10-minute piece of spoken word, or I could turn it into a haiku. And, it's almost like the format. It's almost like your job as an artist is to know which format for which metaphor, or to be good enough that you don't care anymore and you're like, I'm just going to do whatever comes to mind and know that it might not necessarily be the right format.
I think that idea of scope, though, at least, and of scale has been, like, how if you take an ant and you make it as big as a house, his thorax collapse. We all know that, right? That's something we all know.
Like you do.
But yeah, like an ant can't be as big as a house because his like exoskeleton would collapse under the weight of all his organs. And I feel like the hard part sometimes, at least to me, about transit, like a book can't be written in the same way. It's not just like a long story. It's not just like a long song. I feel like it's be trying to build like a mansion out of matchsticks. Like you can't do it. It's a different thing, right?
It's really weird. Like one of the things I started thinking about with the book, because having been around Neil, I've been a little bit around book world, and I've heard him bandy about like, oh, this thing is 40,000 words and this thing is 80,000 words. And I'm like, I have no idea what that means at all. You're talking to me as if I speak word counts. I know how long a 3-minute long song is, and I know how long a 90-minute play is, but I don't know what a 90,000 word book is. Like, is it this? Is it this? Is it like I can speak book height? And I realized, like, songs are the same way, and I've always wondered this, like, and poems too, but like, I remember talking to record producers about like the 3 minutes of truth and how like this singles, like the idea of a 45 single being 3 minutes is somehow random technologically. Yeah. But also there is this human attention span for a song where, like, if the bed song had just kept going on and on, and like there was exhibit M and R and Y, you guys would be like, this isn't right. This is a song, it's now gone past 9 minutes, and everyone would start like shifting uncomfortably, being like, why is this song 9 minutes? Why is this song 15 minutes? This is really fucked up. We thought we were coming to a show. Like, how long is this gonna go? And the fucked up thing is like, your expected attention span for a song may be 5 minutes, but this book is longer than 5 minutes, and everyone's fine with it. Randomly, seemingly. And it seems like for a book, there is this other expectation, which is this book couldn't be 1,000 pages. And the publisher was like 300 tops, and that's basically when you're getting to your like 6-minute song point.
How many words is it?
90,000.
90. You mean like you hope that she didn't like write to the limit assigned by a publisher and stuff?
Hope I didn't what? I wrote so much shit for this book that did not make it into the book. Like, almost, this book was cut in half. And there's all of this writing that didn't make it in there.
Is it better now?
I think it is.
Okay.
I had to really trust the people around me. The original manuscript was 150,000 words, which is like a 600, 500, 600 page book. And I gave it to Neil and was like, cut it. They're saying it's too long and probably all this can't go into the book. And it was one of those moments of real, like, crazy marriage trust where I was like, you're Neil Gaiman too. Like, take this book, you're really smart, just edit it down and I trust you. And I didn't even go back and look at what he had cut. I also had, 6 weeks to edit the entire fucking book, and I was almost happy that I did because I couldn't sit and pore over every single sentence. And I'm finding typos constantly.
Are you? Dave Eggers is like one of my favorite Daves, but in the first edition, like he found several typos like hot off the press or whatever,
Sure, yeah.
and panicked with a pen, and like just redid them as many as he could, like by hand. And so he was caught twice, I think, in bookstores. Like, hey, dude, you can't write in books, and he's like, I gotta write. It's my book. I fucked it up.
No, I've been finding them, but also people have been tweeting me photos. They're like, secret is spelled without an R. It says secret. I think you meant secret. And it's been fucking awesome. I've just been forwarding them to my editor being like,
you're bad, bro. But my first little tiny book, the only person I was really ashamed of to give it to was my dad, because like he's really like, excellence and he doesn't talk like that at all, but excellence is really important to him. And I did go in with like a Pilot Point pen, and I tried to fake Garamond, like to fix all of it. Yeah.
So you started reading the book, but you haven't finished it yet.
I got a copy of it tonight. So as much as a girl could read in a green room, this girl read and was, yeah. Have you guys already read it?
It just came out. So if you already read it, you're a fast
You're fucked
reader.
up. Yeah, it's a piracy.
Fucked up person.
I'm really impressed thus far. Yeah, really genuinely.
Is there anything you want to ask me?
I do. Part of it is wondering how when you put out a message of accessibility and encouraging people to ask for, is your life suddenly flooded by requests? And is that a pain in the ass?
Well, my life was already flooded by requests. And you probably understand this. There's a bizarre hierarchy of giving and taking when you're a musician or a performer or a celebrity in any genre. As soon as you have any kind of power or reach, people come to you. They want things, they want your help. And you have to start learning how to say no, which is really hard. And in in the early days, I was just like, yes, 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 I want to help all people. And I was wearing myself out constantly, saying yes to every charity, every answering every fan letter, sharing every single person's demo, crushed under the inability to say, I actually don't have time, I have to go do my gig, or whatever whatever was actually important. And it's really interesting because asking has this flip side. I feel it as a musician now. I look back at myself at 25 and all the shit I asked for from older musicians and all the help and all of the guidance and the favors and the connections. And I feel so beholden to everyone now who's 25 who comes to me and is like, can you help me? Can you connect me? Can you listen? Can you advise? And I know I can't help everybody. I just can't. All I can do is spontaneously try to do my best, but know that I'm going to kind of disappoint everybody. But
are there any parallels, you learning to say no and you learning how to ask? Have there been parallels on those tracks?
Yeah, I think they're kind of two sides of the same coin, because if you want to kind of strip it down into its essential parts, in order to do both, you have to do it with extreme graciousness. And when you're asking someone for something, you know, and like you see this in the music industry all the time, there's people who ask annoyingly and sort of like, there's like this sense that they're just demanding this thing from you. And there's really a difference between someone saying, hey, can you do this thing for me because I really, really need it, and someone saying, if you have time, can you help me? And they're asking the same question, but you feel it completely differently. And there's a difference between saying, like, I don't have time for you, fuck off, get out of my way, which I've seen celebrities do, and I would love to help you, I just don't have time now. And I don't know if I'm gonna have time, but if I could help you, I would. And the message is technically the same, and the result might be the same, but the way you do it is so different. And I think, you know, when you get good at one, when you just get good at graciousness, it works both ways. You can ask with graciousness and also, you know, offer and decline. Refuse with graciousness.
Do you think, like, as I was in watching a TED Talk and reading some of the book and watching you talk tonight, it feels like in some of your case studies, that's probably too formal a term.
The case studies.
In some of your case studies, musician M, no. But like the Mai Tai, the passage that we heard earlier was like, gosh, you know, do I feel kind of indulgent if I'm drinking a Mai Tai while people are funding me? Initially, like my knee-jerk reaction is to think, I feel like there's a lot of people out there who want to make sure that musicians have enough money to continue making music. And there may be a lot fewer people who still want to give musicians money to make them rich. Do you think that's a distinction that people feel?
Well, it's so weird because we also live in this culture, like, talk about, like, there's all these crazy standards. And, like, in hip-hop, artists are, like, loudly declaring their wealth and their fame in a way that one of the passages I deleted from my book was about this. It was like the difference between the double standard kind of between hip hop artists being like, now that I'm successful, like I am going to flaunt my success in the form of like wealth and jewels and cars and like the transparency of like, I have $5 million in the bank right now and I'm gonna talk about it. And everyone is like, fuck yes, that's why I'm listening to you. And then imagine the Decemberists doing that. Like, nobody would be okay with that. And yet, it's very possible that the Decemberists are making that same level of success, but they're really not allowed, you know, to not drive a Volvo. Like, they have to drive a Volvo because they're the Decemberists. They can't tool around Portland in a Maserati. Like, people would be like, Colin Malloy is an asshole. He used to be great, and now he's driving a tricked-out Mercedes. And why?
But in part, it feels tricky because so much of that like ostentatious consumption and the braggadocious like materialism in hip hop is all with fucking rented Escalades. Those are poor black, for real. Those are poor black men living out a fantasy that we'll buy, right? Have you seen record deals? Like, there are no advances. You're right. There are also people who are not black men who are rappers, for sure.
Well played.
But a lot of that ostentation, some of it's totally legit. You know, I'm not trying to call out Jay-Z. Absolutely, carry on, sir. But a good share of us like helps us as consumers kind of have an outlet for that kind of materialistic fantasy that even the people purporting to live it don't have. Do I have a great, tidy wrap-up sentence? I don't.
It is weird, though, and it also reminds me of Elizabeth. Has anyone seen Elizabeth Gilbert's TED Talk? Where she talks about how our relationship with artists and how we believe in this idea of artists suffering as this great romantic notion and how terribly destructive that is. And what I would love to see is, you know, especially now that we are able, you know, not that we weren't ever able, but the tools of the internet and crowdfunding are making it more possible for artists to just maybe earn a living wage. You know, you don't have to be an insane millionaire, you don't have to be Lady Gaga famous, but you might be able, using these tools, to quit your day job, get in your car, go from town to town, have your 400 fans, eke out a living, and be really happy. And it could be that there can, again, be like a lower middle class or a middle class, a working class of artists, because human beings are like, I want that art, I want to see it manifest, I'm willing to give you $1 a month or $10 a month or whatever it is. And that kind of flies in the face of everything I was brought up with in the 80s, which is like Madonna, Cyndi Lauper, Prince. You're either like a DIY punk band, kind of eking out your miserable existence and working your copy shop day job, or you're a megastar. And are you on the phone or are you talking to us? What?
I've already addressed her, and she's making everybody in these 4 rows uncomfortable.
Who?
Why she's being shushed.
We can have a discussion. What's happening over there, and who are you, and why are we?
I can't hear you because this girl is questioning why people are asking you to be quiet.
People might be asking you to be quiet just because. Wow. Okay. Do we want a consensus moment?
I do want a consensus.
What should we do? I've actually never encountered this before. I'm like at kind of a loss. Just keep going? Okay, I'll keep going. But can you wait to talk to me, and I'll talk to you after the show? Oh, she's gone. That was handled. I love your subtlety. Tessa was like, she's high. She might.
As soon as I did that, I felt like such an idiot. Like, who does that?
She might not be high. She might just be talkative. I don't know.
I mean, I met Amanda tonight backstage an hour ago, but I just feel like that's such a thug thing to be like, at my book readings, there are fights, like, there is security.
Where are the fights, guys? This would actually be, I guess, speaking of fights, this would be a good time to bring on our next guest. Would Kevin Kling, please come to the stage? I'm going to lab him up. Will you talk to them? Hi.
Kevin,
Okay, I'm going to mic you up.
Okay.
Kevin Kling, if you haven't seen him before, is like old school, absolute royalty,
Here, come
Minneapolis
sit
storytelling. Bro.
Talk to them while I lab
Okay.
him. You can give Kevin's introduction while I lab him up.
Okay, Kevin, you might recognize from such historically significant shows here in the Minneapolis
on your
market,
belt.
such as Prairie Home Companion with Garrison Keillor.
I'm just going to...
On a not so Kevin moment, I've been trying to get onto that show for a fucking decade. So two of you who raised your hands really loud, if you have any personal ins. I think one of you was the lady who suggested that I date women. I'll talk to you about both items immediately after this show.
And I never attached my mic to myself because I'm a rebel. So here we go.
This is good.
You just missed all the drama.
No, I was over there. I was hiding in the corner when I was called up for my pugilist skills.
All right, it's about to get really dangerous.
Oh,
You're holding a bunch of papers.
I know. I wrote down because I read your book and I loved it. I already loved you, but now both halves of my brain love you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I wrote some stuff down, and these are more not as much questions as maybe launching, just ideas. But first of all, the tattoo idea you had about getting a tattoo. One of the first things I always wanted to get a tattoo that said, "My other body is a weightlifter."
Oh, like Mr. Red
Yeah, like
does the
Mr.
story.
But but you're right, the use of paradox you have. Whenever I loved so much in your book, whenever you talk about what is lost, you talk about what is found. And in the bed story, in the different stories that you tell. And I just love your use of paradox. I don't know if that's something you do that you think about or that.
That's why I loved Dessa's story so much. Is I feel like one of the things that keeps me an artist is like my perspective on the world. Just I feel like if you're gonna be a good artist, you have to keep constantly expanding your perspective and not just finding like the paradox or the humor in things, but I mean, even in my life, I didn't talk about it specifically in the book, but if you look at it, you notice that like every really fucked up experience and controversy or like weight I had to carry wound up having a really like equally intense silver lining. Mm-hmm. And after a certain amount of time, especially like as a public artist, you just learn to have a certain kind of faith that if everything is crushing you one moment, there is going to be this point at which all of the crushing pays off, and you never know how that thing is going to manifest. And I feel that way about bad gigs, and or shitty relationships, which is like somewhere at some point 5 years from now or 3 years from now, I'm going to be able to look back and say, but then this. And I figured this out, and the more like shitty things I go through and realize like every controversy winds up having a payoff, and it's a kind of a beautiful way to live your life because then it's impossible to regret anything, like anything, and it's like a very Buddhist approach, which is absolute forgiveness to yourself. That even if you maimed and murdered someone, you could find a way back to your own humanity to still exist, be alive, and find a purpose and a reason that this happened, because now you're manifesting this way on the planet. And it's frankly a very unpopular way to think. So you know. And I find myself amazed at how unpopular that way of thinking is. That, even in the bad and even in the darkest people, there's always the flip side and the light.
It's like being vulnerable. You find your boundaries. You find your strength through how much when you give, when you take in, then you find out where your lines are drawn. It's also when you're talking about that, like when you tell a joke that bombs early on in an evening and it doesn't work, the audience knows they owe you one later.
Right.
And they're going, we're going to have to laugh at something later. And you're like, yep, and I know it and you know it. And,
totally.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, like you're a live performer. Like this is also the thing about live performance. I was just thinking about it when I was playing over here. Like I walked into this hall tonight and saw that, I didn't have a keyboard or a grand piano, and I haven't been paying close attention to the stage plots and the writers, and I was like, wow, I'm going to have to play with my back to the audience. Like, that's going to feel weird for everybody. Like, something's going to happen. I'm going to find a way to figure this out. And I feel like in an earlier manifestation of myself, I would be like, just ditch the piano. Mm. It's going to be too hard. But now I'm like, no, I have to use it. Like everything is there to sort of be used. And if you approach your entire life that way, which is like every obstacle is basically a gift in disguise, it's a fantastic way, especially as an artist. It's a great way to approach your life.
That song too, that's one of my favorite parts of the book was reading where that song came from, where it goes, oh my gosh, it's so beautiful and moving. And then now I'll never think about without thinking of closing my eyes and hearing it. Oh my gosh, yeah, that was beautiful. And yeah, that sense of vulnerability that we all feel.
Well, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't had this obstacle to overcome. Which when I walked in, I was like, bad sight lines. Yeah, it's a great prescription for living. and it gets harder. Like, it's easy when I'm like, oh, it's an upright piano instead of a grand piano. My fucking problems. It's really different when it's like, oh, my friend has died of cancer, or I'm getting divorced, or my child's died. Like, it can be really hard to look at that and see any possible,
Here we are.
No, it's on, right? It's cutting in and out. Is it because I'm sitting on it? I'm gonna try it if it cuts out once again. But yeah, I mean, when the shit really goes down, that's when you're tested. When your friends are dying and like you're really faced with trying to find positivity in the truly black things. That's where like these experiences seem really frivolous. But having gone through these exercises, you're like, okay, now I'm prepared for death, divorce, illness, my own mortality, like, and being able to see it through the frame of positivity and not negativity.
But we define ourselves through our struggles. I think we are when you're looking at your life, your struggles and how you got through them and how you think about them, that's where your goals are. That's where your gold is found.
Well, and it's where your relationships strengthen too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you have a struggle, and I mean, this gets right back into the book and the asking. Like, one of the things that I kind of learned while I was writing the book and trying to articulate it is your relationships are based on what you're willing to ask another person. Like, you identify your intimates by what you will and won't ask from them. Your friends, like you've got your tight friends, and your tight friends are the people that you will ask the unaskable, like the thing that you wouldn't ask the acquaintance or the casual work friend or the distant family member or the close family member who you're not actually close with, which everybody has.
And it's like what you were saying about with Neil. Neil's getting to experience something now that he missed when he was a kid. And that's the thing. There's time in our lives when we should learn things and we miss those. But luckily we have relationships later in our lives where we can go back and pick them up. And now that's the other thing too that's so beautiful about relationships and different relationships and how we fit in. We get to finally catch up on those things that we missed,
Right.
I have competing ideas on this, so can I throw one out and see how it resonates? Like,
yeah.
I think when I look back at if everyone were to pick 3 or 4 like defining trials or crises or genuine struggles, I think most of us, after a couple of years have passed, if we're talking to a friend and they say, I got sick and I had to have a hysterectomy when I was 19. God, that was tough, and but it was defining. Looking back on it, it's made me the person who I am, and I wouldn't have it any other way. If you then ask that person, like, cool, so it's been a formative, growing, positive experience, you'd say, yeah. They'd say, do you wish it on your sister? And they'd say, absolutely not. And that's tricky because I wonder how much of that is like us trying to grapple with cognitive dissonance, and how much of that is revisionist history. Because like my big struggles, I feel like I have grown with. I'm stronger. I'm better. Blah blah blah. But if someone was like, "You want to pay that forward?" then I wouldn't.
No, but that's not the way it works.
I know you can't. It's more of a thought experiment.
That's where you get like theoretically, especially if you've struggled and you've become stronger, who would wish suffering on someone else? No, really nobody, unless you're completely sick. And the thing is, you can't control, usually, you can't control why you suffer, but you inevitably do. And then the question is, like, what are you going to do with that inevitable fact? Are you going to wallow, regret, kill yourself? Or are you going to find some other way of framing it and looking at it? And and the fucked up thing is that many people who do suffer want to pay it forward, and that's just part of their pain. It's like, this fucked up thing happened to me, and the only thing I know how to deal with it and what to do with it is to wish this pain on someone else. And it's like, that doesn't work. It really doesn't work. It doesn't heal you. It doesn't absolve you of this thing that happens to you. Actually, you're just perpetuating this fucked up negative cycle.
But I got in the world of disability, because I got two, one I was born with and one I achieved later. There's a really big difference. You grow from one, the one you're born with, and you grow toward another. And how do you grow toward something? You are one kind of person, then you experience a loss. And it can be a limb, a heart, a promise, a person. You have a loss. And now you are the same person you were while they were here or it was here, but you have to grow into that person. And how do you grow? And sometimes you do project it, and sometimes you project yourself into a world that is devastating. But then sometimes you project yourself or grow into even somebody that, like, I wouldn't even trade myself for the one I used to have with an arm, because I'm now a person I prefer than that person. And I can also laugh about things I used to not be able to laugh. I think humor is so important. And that's one of the paradoxes I find in your work that I just love, is that your ability to laugh at something. And even in dark moments, the darker, it's that funeral laughter. It's that laughter of, like, I know that there's jokes in like losing a limb, like, have you ever turned to your lover and said, "Ooh, that feels good. Is that your arm or mine?" And and when you can do that, when you're starting to laugh at a loss, then yeah.
Well, and this is one of the things that I really worry about lately. I mean, I'm sure it's been a problem probably for all of humanity, but I especially see on the internet the lack of ability to allow humor to be part of the conversation and the constant, like, relentless healing that needs to happen when we live in a world filled with, like, sexism and pain and darkness and anger and violence and war. And it seems more and more like people are like, you just don't joke about these things. And I'm like, you have to. How the fuck else are we going to survive if we can't? And it's terrifying seeing humor attacked, especially when it's such an important coping mechanism. And I'm just realizing that, like, this woman tonight, I don't usually, like, when this woman was talking in this room with us on stage and her out there, that's how I feel every time I post something to Facebook and one person is like, ah! And I'm like, shh. We're trying to have a discussion, and the person's like, no, ah! And, like, you're making it impossible for anyone to hear. And it is, like, in a room of 500 people, one person can make it impossible for everyone to hear. And in a room like this, it's easier. It's like, you need to go. And you can't do that on the internet. And the internet is becoming, like, an increasingly humorless place. And it's frightening.
Can haters still get to you, or do haters still get to you?
No, I'm completely over it. I am proud to say that nothing hurts me anymore ever. No, of course, it has to hurt me. It still sucks to this day. Like, yesterday, I posted a thing on Facebook, and I watched two women on a Facebook post about Lena Dunham, just, like, reply to every comment and attack me as a misogynist and a woman hater and a rape apologist. And even though I intellectually know to the core of my being who I am and what I believe and what I love and what I stand for, every single negative comment still hits me and hurts me. I prefer it that way. I don't know who or what I would be if I saw things like that and didn't care, and didn't worry and didn't feel hurt. I feel like I wouldn't be human. I would be some strange machine.
I think, another part of the book that I just love is your need to belong. That's that idea of connecting with people, and that desire to connect is I think that's one of the strengths. It is a strength of the book, but as an artist, that I think is a desire that carries us through our lives. I think that nobody's an artist on purpose. I mean, oh God.
A pox on all your houses.
You know, and so there is a need. There is this need to connect, to really belong. And when you're talking about being the bride and your connection with the eyes, it's so beautiful. There's a dance in contra dancing. It's called the gypsy, and it's a way you spin someone without touching them. So you do it with your eyes, and it seems impossible. And when you first connect with the eyes before you spin, you get so intimate that you get kind of embarrassed. And it's that you talk about that. You refer to that in being the bride, where all of a sudden there's an intimacy you have to get to, and it's with somebody you don't even know. And then you find you are, just like the contra dance, you're spinning someone, you're doing the gypsy. And then you've got a connection you'll always have with that person. Whenever you see them for the rest of your life, you'll go, yep.
Yeah.
We had Louisville. You know, it's like...
Wow. I think we could probably talk for 9 hours. Do it. I know. We technically have a curfew. I'm looking over at the booksellers and I'm like, it's your lives we are ruining. They're like, it's fine. Well, I mean, any last things?
No, I just adore you. I do.
You know what? Honestly, you know what I love the most is I invited Dessa to perform here because I found her online and was like, oh my God, she's amazing, and she's in Minneapolis and she can come. And Kevin actually came, I think, at the recommendation of Peter Sagal, because who was my guest in Chicago last night, and Peter was like, I love the guy, and I love listening to him on the radio, and I love following him on Twitter, and he's so fucking honest. He gets on stage last night and he's like, so my life is terrible right now, and I'm like, thank you. And I mean, and I wasn't expecting, when I arrived here tonight, I wasn't expecting to have these two people on stage at the same time. I was going to bring up Dessa and then send her away, but it actually, like, it makes total sense. And like the thing you just said about the sense of belonging, and I don't know that much about your life and how you tour and how you perform and the intricacies of what you do, but I know enough to know enough. And it's like, there is this one thing that connects anyone called to make art, because it winds up being such a bizarre existence. Any way you cut it, no matter what genre, what age, what medium, if you are deciding that what you want to do with your life is be a writer, be a musician, whatever, like, there is a resonance, and it comes down to that thing. It's like you have this desperate sense to belong in a way with your human family, and it's almost like once you make that decision, you cannot go back. You can't decide to just put that aside and only, make a living doing a job that you're not actually artistically connected to. And I see it with you, and I see it with all of the artists that I talk to. It's this one thread that connects everybody, regardless of genre and place and age and country. And like, we are this single thing. And like, without driving you crazy with meta connections, it winds up not just being relevant to artists, but basically all human beings. Like our need for recognition from one another that we matter and that what our existence has meaning is something that we fly through our lives nowadays and we take it for granted and we don't acknowledge each other as important. And I feel like the best thing we could do as artists is just remind everybody, like, no, that's important. As we eke out our meager existences and pay our rent and eat our food and bear our children and go through all of these motions, like, there is this other thing that's important. And our job is to do that. Our job is to remind ourselves as artists and everybody as human beings, like, recognize each other, recognize each other's humanity. And if we do our job as artists, we somehow manage to remind everybody through art to do that thing.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks. So everybody, Dessa and Kevin Kling.